look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it. And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last week.
Sunny Hostin has faced heated debates before, but nothing could prepare her for this explosive showdown after Charlie Kirk dropped a $100 million lawsuit on The View. The courtroom met the studio, and the sparks that flew could light up an entire city. The moment the lawsuit hit the headlines, tension filled the air on that daytime stage. Viewers at home felt the storm building, as Sunny Hostin's composure began to crack like glass under pressure. She wasn't just annoyed, she was visibly shaken, her anger boiling over into a full eruption. Charlie Kirk didn't play the role of a guest this time. He stormed in as an adversary with the force of a legal thunderclap. The $100 million figure wasn't just a number, it was a message carved in stone. Accountability was coming, whether The View liked it or not.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo...
It was less a debate and more a televised implosion. Whoopi Goldberg, usually the queen of eye rolls, could only sit in disbelief as her co-star spiraled. The glare was there, the sighs were there, but none of it could stop the eruption that Sunny was delivering in front of millions of viewers. Charlie Kirk stood firm, refusing to bow to the storm of outrage aimed at him. His calm demeanor only made Sunny's reaction appear more frantic, as though his very steadiness was pouring fuel on her emotional fire. And the number, 100 million, loomed over everything like a giant shadow. The figure itself was shocking, outrageous, and headline-grabbing. It wasn't just about damages, it was about principle, and Kirk was determined to prove that reckless commentary has consequences. Sunny lashed out, insisting that Kirk's lawsuit was nothing more than a stunt. But her voice wavered, her hands trembled, and the audience could see that beneath the fire was panic. For once, the legal expert was the one on the defensive. The irony was impossible to ignore. A woman who constantly waved her legal credentials like a badge of honor was suddenly being forced to face a legal confrontation that she couldn't laugh or lecture her way out of. The courtroom wasn't just a theory anymore, it was reality staring her down. The View had long been accused of turning discussion into performance, but now the performance backfired. Instead of leading a debate, Sunny became the headline, unraveling in front of millions as Kirk forced the issue into legal territory. Charlie Kirk made it clear that this wasn't about him alone. It was about the thousands of young people his organization represented. He refused to let their names be smeared by careless words and television theatrics.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right. Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach.
Just because someone doesn't have a degree doesn't mean they're stupid, Kirk thundered, sending shockwaves through the studio. That statement sliced right through Sunny's earlier elitist remarks, leaving her visibly rattled and unable to recover her footing. The panel shifted uncomfortably as Sunny pressed on, her eruption growing louder, her points more scattered. The audience, used to clapping along with the hosts, sat frozen, caught between sympathy and shock. Was this daytime drama or a full-blown meltdown? One thing was certain. This was not the polished, rehearsed show people expected. It was raw, unfiltered chaos. The $100 million lawsuit had transformed the set of The View into a battleground. No scripted banter, no safe laughter, just outrage colliding with defiance in a way that could alter the show's future forever. Sunny Hostin pointed her finger, raised her voice, and launched into an emotional defense that sounded less like reason and more like desperation. Every word she shouted revealed how rattled she truly was by Kirk's legal strike. Meanwhile, Charlie Kirk barely flinched. His confidence only seemed to grow as Sunny unraveled before him. To him, this wasn't just a TV spat. It was proof of why his lawsuit mattered. The world was watching the meltdown of media arrogance. And in that moment, the contrast was crystal clear. On one side, Kirk stood steady, calm, and unwavering. On the other, Sunny Hostin erupted like a volcano, her composure burned away by the heat of her own fury.
White privilege is a racist myth that is rooted in bigotry, trying to classify people based on their skin color. If you are a racist, you have something to apologize for. If you're a white person who is not a racist, you have nothing to apologize for. And anyone who makes you apologize just based on the color of their skin, they're the racist and you're not.
This Turning Point conference, the were in the front of out there in front of the conference with anti-Semitic slurs, and
I think it's important that every single person that attended that Turning Point, every Republican speak up against the swastikas, against the flags that were waved.
You let them in.
President, open your
You let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit.
It was television history unfolding in real time. The set looked less like a talk show and more like a courtroom gone off the rails. Viewers weren't left with a debate. They were left with a question. Could The View survive the chaos Charlie Kirk had ignited with just one lawsuit? As the cameras rolled, Sunny Hostin's eruption reached new heights. Her words flew faster, her tone sharper, and her hands cut the air like blades as she tried to tear apart Kirk's case. But instead of dismantling his argument, she exposed her own unraveling for everyone to see. Charlie Kirk didn't need to shout back. His silence spoke louder than any retort. Each time Sunny raised her voice, Kirk simply stared, calm and collected, letting her fury highlight exactly why he was in court in the first place. The lawsuit wasn't just about defamation, it was about setting boundaries in a world where reckless words are treated like harmless banter. Kirk's $100 million demand screamed for accountability, and no amount of shouting from Sunny could drown it out. The co-hosts exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to step in or let Sunny burn herself out. Joy Behar leaned forward, trying to interject with a quip, but her words fell flat against the tidal wave of chaos erupting at the table. Even Whoopi's famous glare couldn't smother the blaze. She sat stiffly, lips pressed tight, eyes wide, clearly realizing that this wasn't just another heated exchange, it was a potential disaster with real legal teeth. The View had faced criticism before, but this was different. This wasn't a Twitter storm that would fade in a day. This was a lawsuit with stakes so massive it could define the show's future.
And the final point I'll say is this, is Sonny, you guys thought that abortion was going to be this like quasi-zealot religious issue? I'm pro-life. If people in the audience aren't, that's fine. What I'm saying though, what gives me promise, and I think we can all agree on this, is that there are other issues that should animate and drive our politics other than this very divisive one. And I was really encouraged by that, Megan. Very encouraged, because the media was forcing this as an up or down vote on a referendum on a highly complicated, very emotional, very personal issue. And it turned out the American people were like, yeah, actually, these other 6 things matter more, and good for them.
And Sonny Hostin had just handed Charlie Kirk the best evidence possible, a televised meltdown. Kirk finally broke his silence, his voice calm yet cutting. This isn't about me, it's about the truth. That single line sliced through the noise, exposing the fragile foundation beneath Sonny's fury. It was a moment so sharp, the studio seemed to freeze. Sonny fired back, insisting the lawsuit was an attack on free speech. But her delivery wasn't strong. It was frantic, emotional, and laced with fear. To the audience, it didn't sound like a defense of principles. It sounded like desperation. And that desperation was exactly what Kirk thrived on. He reminded viewers that free speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. His words landed like hammers, smashing the illusion that The View could smear anyone without accountability. The audience erupted, not in applause, but in gasps and murmurs. What they were witnessing wasn't a debate. It was a dismantling of arrogance on national television. Sonny leaned forward, her voice trembling but loud, as she declared that the lawsuit was nothing more than a distraction. But her eyes betrayed her, flashing with panic as if she knew the walls were closing in. Kirk pressed on with the force of a prosecutor. "Your words don't just vanish, they damage lives," he declared. And with that, the case wasn't just legal, it was moral, and millions of viewers could see it unfolding in real time. The panel tried to shift topics, desperate to regain control of the show, but the tension refused to break.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement? I think, Charlie, you could use the money, and your students definitely could too.
Now we begin with a shocking apology just a short time ago from the ladies of The View to Turning Point USA. A war of words broke out after the conservative group was rallying the next generation of voters at its youth summit in Tampa, Florida this weekend. And the liberal panel just couldn't help themselves. The group sent a scathing cease and desist letter after hosts on The View suggested that Turning Point had embraced neo-Nazis who showed up outside the event.
But it was too late. The meltdown was live, unfiltered, and impossible to edit out. Sonny's eruption wasn't just a reaction. It was a confession. Every ounce of her anger confirmed just how deeply Kirk's lawsuit had struck. She wasn't dismissing him. She was rattled to the core, and it showed with every word. Whoopi finally spoke, her voice heavy with frustration. "This is ridiculous." But even her authority couldn't shield the show from the storm that had already consumed it. The cameras zoomed in on Kirk, who leaned back calm as ever, while Sonny's fury burned hotter. The contrast was undeniable, one steady, one spiraling, and the viewers knew exactly who looked stronger. Social media lit up instantly. Clips of Sonny's eruption spread like wildfire. Memes flooded timelines, and hashtags trended within minutes. And the irony, The lawsuit meant to hold The View accountable had already won in the court of public opinion. Charlie Kirk hadn't even stepped into a courtroom yet, but he had already forced Sunny Hostin to expose the very arrogance he was suing against. By the time the cameras cut to commercial, the damage was done. The meltdown was complete. The lawsuit loomed larger than ever, and Sunny Hostin's eruption had etched itself into television infamy. The return from commercial break didn't calm the chaos, it amplified it. The tension lingered like smoke after a fire, and Sunny Hostin's eruption still hung heavy in the air. The audience could feel the weight of a conversation that had gone completely off the rails. Charlie Kirk leaned forward, his voice steady but sharp. This isn't just about one comment. It's about a culture of reckless words. His statement hit like a gavel, silencing the whispers and forcing everyone back into the reality of the lawsuit.
Look at your achievements. How do you like the so-called uneducated now, Sonny?
Yeah, and again, by the way, rarely do you get the answer to a question in the question. And her whole question is exactly why there was a rebellion against them.
Yes.
Listen, just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. I always differentiate between knowledge and wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. I mean, it's or about North African lesbian poetry. Okay, that's fine, I guess.
Sunny shot back instantly, her voice raised, but the cracks in her delivery only grew wider. She wasn't dismantling Kirk's point, she was proving it, showing that unchecked arrogance collapses under the pressure of accountability. Her co-hosts tried to rally behind her, but their words fell flat. The spotlight was locked on Sunny and Charlie, the battle lines drawn in a way that no witty remark or sarcastic jab could erase. Whoopi shook her head in disbelief, clearly wishing the whole spectacle would vanish into thin air. But the cameras kept rolling, and the meltdown wasn't going anywhere. It was burned into history. Kirk pressed harder, reminding the audience that Turning Point USA's students were the real victims. He spoke of the young people unfairly smeared, and each word carried a punch stronger than any insult thrown his way. Do you think they deserve to live under lies spread on national TV? He demanded. His words weren't just for Sunny, they were for every viewer watching at home, forcing them to confront the consequences of careless commentary. Sunny tried to regain her footing, but the fury had consumed her composure. Her voice cracked again, her eyes glistened, and it was clear. This wasn't strength. It was unraveling in real time. The panel looked broken. Joy Behar silent, Whoopi frustrated, and Sunny out of control. This wasn't The View's proudest moment. It was their most disastrous one, live and unedited.
Over the weekend, Turning Point USA hosted a riveting event in Tampa, Florida called the Student Action Summit. Outside of the event were individuals waving flags and engaged in other activities. Well, on Monday's show, members of The View made a few comments about it.
The conservative group Turning Point USA has condemned the group of neo-Nazis and said they have nothing to do with the organization.
Yeah, but where was DeSantis is what I want to know.
But you let them in.
President, open your
You
mouth.
let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit.
Sunny slammed the table, declaring the lawsuit an outrageous attack. But her words fell flat, sounding more like desperation than defense. It was the cry of someone who realized the power had slipped away. Kirk, calm as ever, delivered the knockout line. Actions have consequences, and so do words. The room went silent for a beat, the truth of the statement hanging heavier than the studio lights. The eruption was complete, and the contrast was undeniable. Charlie Kirk, steady and unshaken, had turned Sunny Hostin's outburst into Exhibit A in his case against the show. The View had long been a stage for outrage, but this time the outrage had consumed itself. What was meant to be entertainment had turned into a televised implosion, and millions had witnessed it with their own eyes. As the credits rolled, one truth was crystal clear. Charlie Kirk's lawsuit wasn't just legal, it was cultural. He had flipped the script on The View, forcing the loudest voices in daytime TV to finally face the one thing they always dodged: accountability. And Sunny Hostin, her eruption may be remembered not as her defense, but as her downfall. A meltdown so raw, so unfiltered, and so unforgettable, it turned a talk show into a courtroom and left viewers asking if The View could ever recover from the $100 million storm Charlie Kirk unleashed.